All right, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gavin Egan, and welcome to our October Trustworthy AI in Practice: Govern it, Secure it, and prove value. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Our intent today is really to have a kind of a practical workshop and chat about what's really going on with AI, right? We see Gartner's telling us that 40% of agentic AI projects will be cancelled by 2027. I recently was at a presentation with IDC. They talked about the 5 trillion cumulative economic impact in EMEA alone by 2030 of AI. 50% of EMEA CEOs believe that AI will fundamentally transform the business models that they're working at in their organizations. Yet we see projects are stalling, and that's one of the things we really want to kind of address here today. What's happening there? We see costs are continuing to climb. The business value and the outcomes that we're promising, they're become more and more unclear. And very importantly, the proper risk controls are not in place. So to help me on this journey today, I'm joined by 2 eminent leaders in the AI space. So Robert Kehoe is the Global Director of Technology and Product at SmartTech 247. Robert leads the product and development at SmartTech. I'm personally very heavily dependent on Robert and Robert's success and what he does. A CISSP certified professional. He's been featured in AWS. This is my architect. So delighted to be joined by you here today, Robert. Thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
And from IBM, we're joined by Mike Kehoe, the data security leader for EMEA at IBM. So, Mike travels all over EMEA, helping customers build out their next generation security operations and hybrid cloud. Background spans industrial controls, enterprise process design, go-to-market strategies. And I'm delighted to say, Mike, we share an alma mater, Trinity College Engineering, right? So good to be talking to the good old boys. Okay. All right. Thanks. Thanks today. So folks, we're going to kick into the main part of the webinar here. If you have questions, please put them in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll address it. We'll address the questions at the end. So please feel free. We're really trying to drive more of a conversation here. So Robert, if I can come to you first, just to kick this off, and actually a question to both of you, but I'll start off with you, Robert. So I'm talking about trustworthy AI. So what does that actually mean?
That's a great question. And I guess there are definitely a couple of facets to that. And like, what are the challenges with AI when you underneath the hood? AI is quite complicated. Vector databases, recurrent neural networks, transformers, and this emergent kind of decision making that it has. But provenance is basically the key word here of how do you know that the AI is not hallucinating, that it is not coming up with this artificial data, that it can be quite confident in what it sounds, and that's basically because it's a statistical model underneath the hood, that it can cause this hallucination effect where it's very confident that this thing it said is actually, but that thing is actually wrong. So I think this trustworthy AI is, in fact, OpenAI had a very interesting paper maybe about a month ago where they talked about this and how they are trying to teach the AI to reinforce what they call good behavior, so that when the AI is wrong, that you reward that behavior. Basically, quite an interesting paper. Maybe we can link to it I will drop a link maybe in the chat afterwards if people are interested in the nitty gritty. But I think provenance is really important, and not just assuming that everything that comes out of ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini or Grok or whatever AI you're using, that it is really the truth. This erosion of soft skills is going to be a real problem in the future if people don't exercise that ability to be critical and analytical and verify stuff. And not just accept that what the AI is doing. So yeah, I would definitely say trustworthiness is a really hard problem to solve in the AI space, and this is where honestly the humans add a lot of value, because this is it's no good just having somebody in a company that has zero knowledge of the underlying like system, and they're just like typing in a prompt and hoping that they're going to get it right, that the data that comes out of the AI is correct. Like you're going to have a bad time when you have zero knowledge people, zero subject knowledge people asking the AI to give me a presentation or give me insight on this domain when they have zero knowledge of that domain. So it's really important to like have both people and AI if you want to have this trustworthiness and to always like investigate the sources. The number one query I type into ChatGPT, I will just share, is every time I do something is cite source in every single query I ever do with ChatGPT.
Okay. Yeah, and Mike, same question to you. What does trustworthy AI mean to you?
I'm probably going to quote a quote from Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. And you have to look at it like that. What we're doing is we've got systems that we've had for many, many years. We've had a human in the loop where an example of this is look at pricing of airline tickets. So therefore you want to have adaptive pricing. And that's why we have prices that you might buy from an airline, 58 euros, 28 cents. How did you arrive at that? Well, of course, they're looking at the amount of people traveling. They look at a sports event in the city it's going to, might look at the competitors' pricing, and they come up with that. Now, you would traditionally have many, many tens, if not hundreds of people, maybe on spreadsheets, on business intelligence, trying to adaptive price in real time, which wouldn't be real time because there'd have to be a collection. You then ask an AI engine. So it's not even a ChatGPT engine. You're asking an AI engine, find the patterns of activity and find that we are still maybe 5% above our best competitor on this route to maximize cost. So it doesn't even have a front end, but it's just pushing out numbers to the website, and people are just clicking saying, oh, that's a fantastic deal. But in real time, it's competitive pricing match. Imagine if that had lost its way. And suddenly, if the tickets are 700 euros, well, no one's going to buy them. But if they became €7, you can imagine on social media, people going, quick, get on the website. You can get a flight to London for €7 today. And clearly, your COO, he or she is going to shout down, turn that thing off. It's an embarrassment. That's what we're trying to protect against, because we are going to give great power to this solution as we progress into the future with our businesses. And we got to make sure that responsibility and that trustworthiness bang on.
Thank you, Mike. So Robert, back to you. Maybe just a question for you, and then we'll come on to Mike. So you're, as I talked about earlier on, so you're on the front line of delivering the benefits of AI for SmartTech 247. So can you talk a bit about the risks and opportunities that you see?
Yeah, definitely. From my perspective, like my department deals with a lot of like product development, and AI is definitely very valuable, like in product development. Like Claude in particular is, for example, a very good AI for writing code. So definitely, like there are efficiency, performance, and like improvements there with AI. So like we can get the AI to write tests, for example, specifically in our department, to kind of like automate the like mundane stuff that developers don't want to do. Maybe the most interesting one, like I've seen, is how AI can help, in particular, like graduates who are just joining the company, who have like some small amount of domain knowledge, from their college and university experience. And historically, those people would have taken a long time to like get up to a productive level, and now with AI, they can effectively, sit there and, with this very patient, this never gets flustered, never has to go to a meeting, kind of, pair programming effectively, or rather than taking another kind of senior engineer, that they can just sit there with the AI and just ask questions of the AI and get this response at kind of this very slow response, so that like the time that's then spent with the senior engineer of truly being able to understand what is the business requirement here, and being able to translate that back into like a model, shall we say, a conceptual model that they can think about. Okay, hey, here's how I can solve the technical problem. That the AI can then do the more boring part of, okay, hey, that loop that you just wrote, here's a scenario where it can turn into an infinite loop. The AI can help solve all those problems, which are kind of mundane and like, not useful for a senior engineer to do. But that teaching part of AI is very important. So the opportunities are very large, I would say, definitely for any company that is doing like product development. Like also, I guess you got the security stuff. AI is particularly good at like security and spotting like perhaps like subtle patterns that are far beyond the capacity of a human to identify. Of course, there are many risks, and we have seen many risks like materialized, where AI has been given too much access and like it has assumed too much responsibility. So it has destroyed production databases, for example, because it misinterpreted the intent of the user. So there's a lot of risk, and it's definitely not something I would ever connect to a production system. As a product development, I would fantastic use of AI in the development environment, but I would be very wary and very slow to connect any AI to a production system. In that sense of like automating, automation, I would say is a much better solution for that specific problem rather than AI. So it's a lot of this like understanding what is the risk, what is the benefit. Just because you can use AI here and somebody's selling you a technology that has AI into it doesn't mean you should. So I think really understanding this risk and reward and potential like downside of what happens if this thing goes wrong, what happens if this thing hallucinates, because like AI, it's still every day I ask it a question or I ask it to create an image and I still have this, wow, I can't believe it like in 2025 I could do this. It's still amazing to me, coming from like old school like IBM 486 computers, and like just like the change in my lifetime. It's still very dramatic, but it's definitely one of those things that like you have to have your eyes open and understand that there are going to be downsides, there are going to be risks, and to have this really like understanding of like, don't think about it as AI, just think about it as any information security risk. Okay, how do you manage this as a process? How do you quantify the risk? How do you like categorize the risk so that you have like appropriate controls in place and that, you're not going to have a bad day.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate it. Mike, over to you. So you're dealing with many clients globally on trustworthy AI. What are you seeing, and how is IBM approaching this?
So what are we seeing? We are seeing a rush to adopt AI at all different levels. And as Robert said, there's agentic AI, but there's also other levels not as powerful. It's things like narrow AI, and I'm going to explain that in a moment. But we are seeing a big rush to it. And there is a problem with that in relation to that. You have our business transformation leaders going, we want to transform the business. We see that the mundane, repetitive tasks can be achieved by AI at much faster speeds and a lot more effective. And there's a rush to that. Now, what drives that, though, is that, and of course, C-levels will just go, yeah, fantastic. But sometimes they can overlook, say, well, I can prove my ROI is 24 months, and everybody is happy because that's what business transformation executives love to do, is prove that we're the saviors of this business, we're going to bring it forward. But then when you come to reality, where myself and Robert might talk about, well, you haven't included governance and you haven't included security, which will probably increase your ROI maybe to 32 months. And they'll go, should we need it? It doesn't generate business for us. Can we put it in after? And we go, no, no, and no, because putting it after, it'll be 4 times costly and you won't get to 24 months, because Gartner has not even predicted they said that you will see up to 40% of AI projects been put in the bin because the fact that it lost control. And someone just said, turn it off. It's an embarrassment. It doesn't work. So one of our biggest detractors is actually sitting down and getting a coffee with the business transformation leaders and going, listen, your ROI doesn't include this thing making mistakes, what we call undesirable results. And you'll have to add it in. And yes, your ROI will take a hit. But if you don't have it, you won't even make ROI because it'll be shut down well before then. And these are the conversations we're having. We're not even getting to the technology. The technology is rock solid, but the way it's been implemented and maybe the laissez-faire attitude of what this thing might do is problematic. And that gets back to like Lean Six Sigma, swim lanes, writing out your process maps, and making sure you get to your desired results. So it's still a learning for everybody, but the good news is the technology is rock solid, without a doubt.
It does. And then how is IBM approaching this?
So what IBM is doing that, we're saying that as we talk about AI conversions, we're saying, okay, you can use Orchestrate to design your AI, you can tune your models, we'll give you training data, we'll quantify the cost and operation, but we'll also talk to you about what has to be with Trustworthy at the other end. So we're going to give you the full gambit to say, we're going to tell you about the good side, but we have to also tell you about I wouldn't say the dark side, but I would say the side that is what's called a hygiene factor. It doesn't make you money, but if you don't keep it clean, it will get sick on the dirt that it brings in.
Okay, thank you. So, are you going to talk us through a bit of a deck from an IBM perspective,
Yeah,
Mike?
I'm going to show a couple of bear with me for 20 minutes or so, but just because it's complex, and I always love to show a little bit of metaphors to bring the complex situation into context. Okay, so I'm not going to get too technical here, and Robert, jump in as you need be, but I'm going to explain it in the sandwich dilemma. And the sandwich dilemma states that, you have a sandwich shop and you have chefs, and those chefs are difficult to recruit, difficult to train, and difficult to maintain. But it's still a very human task-oriented system. And you say, well, I'm sure there could be another way. So what you do is you invest in an automatic sandwich making machine, an AI system, and you give it its parameters. You say, please make the best sandwiches in the world with the most commercially efficient way of doing it. And therefore, I'll be one of the best sandwich makers on the street. That's my desired result. Okay. So what you forgot to tell it that you wouldn't tell a chef, hey, don't put rank meat that's 4 weeks old into the sandwich. Now that's what's called shadow data. You've just said, oh, I found meat at the back of the fridge. You told me it's cheap. I don't have to buy it. I'm going to stick it in the sandwich. Well, you've just poisoned the AI. And you can see here, there's little flies. Oh, well, I know there's protein. And you said make a creative sandwich. I'll put the protein in there. And you go, hang on, don't. Now, I wouldn't have to explain to a chef that, hey, don't put flies in and don't use rank meat. But of course, the AI is a child. It doesn't understand that. And therefore, that's where governance starts to come in. You actually say there's guide rails you have to obey in the building of your AI solution. And then the guy next door says, oh, I'm really, really jealous of Mike's sandwich making ability. So he comes in and he tries to smash the unit or break into it, just like we've seen where people have broken into databases in Marks and Spencer's or in the health attack that we had in 2021 and May 21. It's still a system, and it's still vulnerable to a very smart cyber attacker. So our job here is to say, how do we make sure that your desirable results stay desirable, and the hallucination or the drift of governance is contained, and the protection of an external attack is also maintained. And that, in essence, is a high level understanding of desired results versus undesired results. So we explain that a little bit better to say that if we're trying to keep if this thing starts to stray, you're going to have problems with the EUA Act, which is regulatory fines. You could have reputational damage, and we see this system, it started to use profound language because it found it in an old database or an old language model, and it was only to one customer, but that customer screenshotted it and it went viral. You can imagine the conversation with the COO the next day in the boardroom. You have revenue loss, where an Air Canada system was completely shut down because the AI misinterpreted the refund policy and started refunding pretty much everybody who wanted a ticket, regardless of Super Saver. And then finally, which I think is scary, as I said, things will get shut down. So it's IBM's job and SmartTech's job is to say, we want to keep our client out of the predicted 40% failure rate, because we want to help you focus not only on understanding clear business, understanding cost management, but also making sure adequate controls are stay in place. So getting very back, Gavin, to your first question, this is what IBM does. It opens up the kimono to the big picture. You to say, there's things that are going to blow you off course, and you need to stay on top. So, so if you were to look through, and we've worked with SmartTech for many, many years, and we've sold the SIM system and the source system and the identity access system. But really what you're looking at is, as you've added AI into the much larger mix, where you've had network security with EDR and SIM and SOAR and identity access. And as you've added, you've got resiliency, which is recovery systems in flash and storage systems. Your new, which is your new insider threat. Your new insider threat is your AI, because what you've done is you've given it superpower and you said, right, be creative, be go across my organization, find what we can do better. But if I can coerce that, or if it starts to make a mistake, it can really generate bad results. So to IBM and to smart tech likewise, we just see it as another threat vector that has to be locked down. We've been locking down network and data and resiliency for since the 80s. Well, now the turn of AI, and we're going to start to lock that down. Give it its day in the sun to be creative, to look for patterns, but don't let it hallucinate, or don't let it get coerced. So really, that's what we're trying to achieve. So if you bear with, for this isn't new, and I'm going to explain why this is not new. Back in 1997, IBM built Deep Blue, and it was against Garry Kasparov, the world chess champion. Gary won the first game. Why did he win the first game? He came out and he played suicide chess, because we taught the AI system, say, you beat Gary because he's going to try to beat you. So every time he makes an aggressive move, you counter. Well, Gary came out and played suicide chess, and he tricked the AI, and he won the first game. Funny enough, we spotted that, we reprogrammed Deep Blue, and we won the next 5. There's a great movie on that on Prime, all about what we did, and we didn't come out too well. They thought that we had cheated, but we just knew our component and changed. But it just shows that this is called model evasion. We knew the model and we played around with it. You also talked about, Robert, AIs getting creative, and you wouldn't put them in place of maybe a supply chain or a manufacturing site, especially if it's maybe in pharmaceutical. You can't muck around with those chemicals. You'll fall foul of regulators in pharmaceutical. Well, there are other AIs which are narrow AI, and narrow AI could be based on Google Maps. It actually knows every position from here to Dublin Airport. We're both in Dublin today, Gavin, and it will tell you the best route to get there based on traffic information. You turn your phone off and turn it on again, it'll tell you the same thing. It doesn't guess. It doesn't create anything new or generate an idea or say, well, I know a little rat run. It goes, this is the way to go. But in 2020, an artist in Berlin walked down a street with 100 Google phones, and poisoned the input data. And suddenly all the Uber drivers and everybody else that used Google Maps stayed away. Now, it was fun, but imagine if I was selling this apartment here and I paid this artist 5,000 euros. I say, because then when I sold the apartment, I would tell people who are in view data, hey, look out the window. This street is super safe for your kids. You can park. It's not congested. And I put another 20,000 on top of that apartment. I've just weaponized the AI system. So what you have to look at is, when you're looking at AI systems, and again, there's other attacks like of course, backdoor attacks, brute force attacks. But when you look at AI, your intentions are recommendable. You really want to bring your business forward to bit faster, cheaper, slicker. But you have to consider, these are all the things that are going to trip you up. So these are the things that will happen in governance, with transparency, with drift. And as Robert, you did say, you always say, well, tell me where you got that from. So you want to know, where's your trusted data from and how transparency it is. But also, as I said, the artist here did data poisoning, and Garry Kasparov did model evasion. So these aren't new. These have always been around. And the bad guys are going to definitely abuse and use the attack vectors, while the AI rush to AI and really forgetting about this kind of stuff is, it can be a real issue. So if I was to sum this up in just the final slide before we probably come back and talk a little more, AI can misbehave, no doubt about it. What you have is 2 ways of misbehaving. You have pass anomalies, which is accidental, which in other words, you've implemented the AI. You probably should have done a better, maybe as is to be process map and swim lane map, and then doing a good Lean Six Sigma review. because you're not just telling your AI, hey, go for it, and if you're clumsy, we'll fix in post. And this is what passive anomalies do. Well, if you look at AI security, this is active. People are going to target your system. People are going to figure out how to weigh in. People are going to figure out, can I get into your tune model and can I tune it myself? Can I get into your learning data and poison that? Can I turn on or off conditions? Can I put another AI into the system that will affect your AI? And this is not in the realm of fantasy. Remember what happened to Marks and Spencer's wasn't an AI attack, but it was very sophisticated people working the system and figuring out all the different ways to get to the data where they can encrypt the data and knock out the online system and steal a huge amount of data. They are technical people, and AI is a technical solution. They will work it out. So it is, in other words, somebody trying to coerce your AI. So the way you think about this, if you had it 30 seconds in front of your executives, governance is inside out. Something is inside the system that wasn't spotted and it's worked its way out. So it could be profanity, it could be a random calculation, it could be shadow data, but suddenly the result is bad. Well, AI security is outside in. So even though you've done everything correct, your bad guys are looking at it and going, we're going to figure a way in. And we're going to figure out how we can abuse the AI system, just like the Berlin artist. And therefore, you have to think about trusted AI. And that's what it's all about. There are two different systems. One is governance, one is security. I don't think a COO would care, like in the Canadian Air example, which system messed up. He or she are going to say, shut it down. It's an embarrassment. It's costing us money. Even though we spent X amount of hundreds of thousands on it, I don't want it anymore. I don't trust it. So what you got to do is you really got to consider, and this is a complete different mindset, especially for hardened cyber professionals like ourselves. AI can be considered your new insider threat. Now, AI doesn't want $1 million. AI doesn't need to get revenge. AI doesn't need ideology beliefs. Maybe in the future, maybe AI might consider that humans aren't the dominant species on the planet, but we're going to leave that for the time being. But unlike insiders, financially or revenue, but AI can be ignorant and produce crazy, and AI can be coerced, and you have to consider that as a threat. You just can't let it off. So as I said, with great power comes great responsibility. So these are before I'll show the demo, I might just stop here the sharing, but these are the concepts that IBM have put into our solutions and our conversations with our clients. As I think it like an insider. It is an insider. And would you let in somebody from off the street and give them the keys of your building? No. Well, you just have with an AI model.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I mean, I think you raise a couple of really interesting points. The AI is the new insider threat. The coerce AI. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, and we're seeing that with our customers today. They're looking at AI and they're saying, listen, how do we approach this? How do we approach this in the right way? I remember, in our partner company, ForcePoint, get visibility, talking on stage with those guys last year, and they talk about like the first prompts into AI is released in an organization, sort of. I was actually surprised, what disciplinary actions are going on in the company, like as you were saying, the AI is like a child, right? It just doesn't know. It's going to just answer. Is going to answer the question. So maybe before we look at the demo, maybe question to you, Robert. So we've been talking a lot about AI security, but IDC tell us that the proof is there. Companies who put strong governance in place early on in their AI projects are yielding way more success than those that are not. Can you give us some perspectives there, please?
Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely like the more you are like you treat it as rather than this shiny new toy. Like speaking from the product side, you can imagine there's no product manager in the world that's not being asked how much AI can you squeeze in the next quarter into our product. There's a lot of pressure on that. Absolutely. but like the ones that are going to be successful are the ones that like are a lot more like strict with themselves, and rather than asking what can we do, what should we do, and so not trying to do everything. So like the Gartner, it was interesting, like Gartner said 40%. There's another MIT survey that said 95% of projects will fail, and I would say that's probably more realistic. And like it comes very much down to this, that people, the governance, so they are not really thinking of this end-to-end value. So, lots of stuff that, like a great example, chatbots on the websites of homepages sounds like a great idea, but what, like, people are not thinking of this like end-to-end solution of, okay, if you release a new version of your software, for example, or of your manual or an iteration of your product, how are you going to update that chatbot so that it knows when you ask a question? So that like people are just thinking, oh, we could add this chatbot, let's do that straight away. Let's give it this like our set of manuals, and it can answer the questions. But they don't have this governance process there to, okay, now we're going to update the manuals because the new version of the iPhone came out and the new manuals came out. So you get all of these excited customers coming to your website and they ask questions, oh, what is the price, or how do I do this feature of this brand new product that was just released, that the marketing department has spent months and millions of dollars launching, and the AI isn't able to answer any of those questions because there's no governance, there's no process behind that to teach the AI about changes and adaptations to the stuff. So AI is kind of like this thing that's living, and you have to like have this governance model where you're going to kind of look after it from just like software. It has an entire life cycle, and it's not just something you dump and it's now done. You're going to be forever responsible, like a child. Once you have one, you are forever responsible for maintaining that child and educating that child and keeping that child like maturing that child and making sure that they are like a responsible adult, that they grow into this responsible thing. So yeah, my advice is definitely for projects to be successful, ensure there's governance, ensure that you're thinking end to end, not just about this instant, what are the features that we can have right now, what are the features in the future, what's going to be needed, how are we going to make sure that it's always up to date. This typical kind of like governance of any kind of software. So forget that it's AI, just like how would you update and release any changes to any software, and not thinking about this special kind of flashy stuff that it could potentially do, just having this like longer term vision of, and small scope. Maybe that's the other thing, like lots of people think of, okay, wow, there's so much we could do now with AI, and like we could have an entire CRM system, and a chatbot on the front end ask questions, and it could do order fulfillment with agentic AI, and we could have technical support. I would say, like, forget about all of that. I just pick one small use case, like do meeting minute summarization. Like there's a fantastic use case for AI, that actually saves humans time, and can deliver real value to the customer rather than try to do everything at once. And you could spend millions trying to build this end-to-end system, so I would say there, keep scope small, make sure it's well governed. And honestly, the big thing that came from that MIT survey is like, buy, don't try to build, go purchase from some vendor that has solved this problem already. And if you go try to build your own thing with your own model, you're just going to spend a few $1 million. You're going to come out with nothing at the end of it other than upset people, disappointed people. So I definitely, I would strongly suggest that people consider buying a solution rather than trying to build their own.
Thank you, Robert. So Mike, at IBM, you guys, I mean, you've developed a product to address this. Can you share something with us there?
Sure. Yeah, let's get going on this. So you can see my screen again?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay. So just what bounce off what Robert just said. Yeah, like we're working with banks around the world. They have many different banking functions. Inside those banking functions, they have tasks to be done. And then from those tasks, they're looking at AI use cases. So with agentic AI, you can break those use cases into much smaller little tasks. So let's say risk management, cyber has an issue, fraud, and let's say they want to focus on money laundering. Okay, So you want to focus on it. You have to be able to train the AI to spot money laundering. It's anything above 10,000 euros, anything coming in from IP addresses or from people we don't recognize, anything that's coming in from banks that are located quite close together. Looks like there's what's called a fraudulent placement going on. That's just one, but you have to explain that. So take your time, work out your use cases, figure out the use cases and get them going. I'm working with banks that we're putting in over 70, 80 use cases, and then we got to protect them as well. So now, what as Robert said is, don't come up with your own, think about it. There are great platforms out there, such as Azure and AWS and IBM, and where they have what's called models, and you can tune those models, but they also have libraries to help you tune those models. So what you do then is I'm going to show you where the AI security comes in. What you have is you get a model. So we could use Granite out of IBM, and you tell them, and the model's like a child, but it hasn't been taught. And you tell it, hey, anything above 10,000 in cash, anything from an IP we don't understand, anything from a person who can't qualify where they got the money from, and you explain, surface that to the top. And then you generate what's called an application. But you've used a model that has a lot of tool sets built in, and probably have a couple of base models that you can build from to get your, in this case, anti-money laundering. From there, the application AI will start to pull in LLMs, tools, databases. Again, if I'm looking at banks, I'll probably pull in the geospatial tool set because I need that. And then from there, they'll bring in. Now, it's important to us that our solution that I'm going to show now can get onto this application and query, what exactly have you touched? What databases, what LLMs, what tools, what software, what vectors have you touched? Because I need to know every single piece of them to lock them down and to ensure they're good before. And then I'm going to lock down the model and the application, because I don't want someone saying, hey, anybody from Russia can put as much money into this bank as possible. So someone's gone in and changed the rule set inside the application by getting into the foundation model. So you just say, no, I'm locking that down. And then you let the people go. So this is what you're going to see in the demo. You're going to see us rip through one application and find everything, and then lock it down and consider it if it's going to be a problem or not. So I wanted to just show you that this thing can sit onto the 5 or 6 big engines that Robert just talked about. Okay, so the first things first is when you see you'll see that we have a low score of 55, and we have quite a lot of databases. So it's found over 800 databases, engines, tools, and so on with a low score. So I can say, okay, well, what I want to do is I want to take a look at maybe up here, which is all my different use cases. So let's say I want to go into the anti-money laundering. The good news is the anti-money laundering agent is 100% secure. We've done our complete sanitization. We've locked all the models down. We know where the models are pulling in data. And that's key, because money laundering, if you facilitate money laundering by accident or by design, you can get fined significantly by financial regulators. So at least I can focus on the biggest AI engines. So what I can do is I can say, well, show me all the different resources I have. And they say, well, some are shadowed because they have not been reviewed by the team, but they've been activated. Well, that's a big red flag. So we can then go down and say, well, can I review this one? And this one says it's already found that it hasn't been reviewed, so therefore it hasn't been sanctioned. But also there's a vulnerability sitting inside it that is saying that there's an improper certificate. And we can then, the AI solution will also say, well, here's the vulnerability. We'll give it to you in plain English, but I'm going to tell you how to fix it in GitHub. So inside our solution, not only do we start to look for the full end-to-end asset mapping, we look for vulnerabilities, and then we look to solve those vulnerabilities, because we want to get this to a trustworthy AI as best as possible. So what I can do is I can take a look here. Again, it's sorry about the stuff that's falling around, but this is the entire asset landscape. So I can see every single tool, LLM, database that I'm using, and I can then take a look at what have they been correctly sanctioned or non-sanctioned? Have they been locked down? So I can say, okay, I'm going to shut that AI down until I know I can trust it. And then what I can do is I can start to say, okay, if I have additional, I want to add additional models. So it could be, and I have multi-models running in the same organization, AWS or IBM. And what I do is say, well, as I start to deploy the models, we actually have a pen testing system, which will allow it to, oops, that's my, which will allow the system to say, I found a new resource, and the resource is going to go through penetration testing before I let it into my model. Because at the end of the day, I want to be able to go to a AI security posture management dashboard. And my job is to make sure all of this is green. And of course, it's going to change because we're going to develop new AIs. We're going to get AIs get more creative, and they will start to change. But the other thing we can do is we can actually get into policy writing to say that if we're bringing in from anything in, I can write against policy to say that if the AI is ripping through data or ripping through my organization, if it comes across things like PII, which is personal identified information, that could be credit card data, it could be driver license. If I'm in a bank, I could say I've got 100 VVIPs and I don't want any of them to be sucked into my engine whatsoever. So in other words, you can set up real-time guardrails and policies against your AI. Say, I don't know where you might find a credit card inside all my shadow data or inside, but if you find it, under no circumstances can you ingest it and use it for something else. So in other words, you're real time keeping an eye on your AI that no new data has been ingested, that the models can't be touched, and so on. Because at the end of the day, you want to get close to what is a dashboard, and you can just see down here, it says the EU AI Act. So the system also says, how close are you to breaking the EU AI Act? EU AI Act is not letting AI do things like profile people of certain groups. It doesn't let you have AI as a HR chatbot if you have certain questions. So if someone says, hey, my mental health isn't good today, you cannot let an AI engine talk to a person who needs professional help. It won't let you predict crime. It can't say, I'm not going to let Mike on a flight anymore because I know he's a party guy and he might have air rage. That's pre-crime. But not only are you looking at EU AI Act, you have to take a look at GDPR has always been in play. GDPR has been in place since 2016. If the AI was to step out of line and didn't have good governance or good control and started saying, oh, go to the airline business, we have 150 people on board. We're flying into a Muslim country, so we want to make sure that a majority of our food service doesn't have pork on it. So the AI will work out what the menu should be for those air chefs. Perfect. But imagine it said, yes, but all the people on the flight who are Muslim, here's also their passport numbers. Well, automatically you've broken GDPR. So of course you can say, yes, I want to send this information to my air chef company that this is the amount of vegetarian options we want, and this is for this flight or this flight. And here's the people, and here's the list of people and their passport numbers. Boom, you've just broken GDPR. And even though it was accidental and the AI didn't think anything wrong by adding a little bit more data to the order process to the air chefs, bang, you're in trouble straight away. It doesn't matter about EUA Act. So we're constantly up against existing regulation, new regulation. We're constantly trying to push our AI systems to do their very best, but we have to make sure that we can remain inside a good posture management, both from the 4 R's I talked about, that we don't get damaged on regulations, we don't get damaged on reputation, we don't get damaged on revenue loss, and we don't get damaged on runtime. In other words, shut that thing down, it's an embarrassment. So the rules of the game haven't really changed much from any cyber solutions we've gone before. We're still protecting against the same R's. It's just we are now moving at a much faster rate because AI adoption and AI usage. Again, I was in my digital sales center today in Dublin, and if we were to bring in a new graduate and put them on the desk, we wouldn't have to tell them you can't use profanity on the phone. Okay, we'd accept that, they'd know that. But if I put an AI engine in and it finds an old library of profanity, what's stopping it from using the profanity? It doesn't know right and wrong. And that's just a small example. but you'll just find more and more examples of that you go, God, if it puts that data out, we're in GDPR trouble big time, or we're in AUI Act trouble, or we're in HEPA trouble, or we're in Sorboxy trouble. There's a lot of work to be done.
Thank you, Mike. Absolutely fascinating. And yeah, I know one of the questions that's come in is so one of your slides shows an AI inventory dashboard. For most organizations, that visibility doesn't exist. How would you recommend they start building an accurate AI asset inventory?
We'll share this video, and there's a voiceover video. We'll share it with the team here, and you can share it with folks. It actually, when I showed the first slide, where once you build the AI application using a foundation model, our system has direct connectors into that model, especially with the 5 or 6 big models, and it interrogates it and goes, tell me everything you're touching that you've connected to, and so on, and it builds it automatically, so you don't have to build it. The system says everything you touch now and in the future, you need to tell me, and then I'll classify it. So it's a real-time discover and classify using the ground zero as the AI agent that you're about to deploy. So it's, yeah, you don't have to worry about it. It does it.
Okay. And then a follow-up question to that is just they're coming in on the screen here. When you surface hundreds of AI artifacts across different clouds and teams,
yeah,
how do you decide what qualifies as high risk or needs governance first?
Okay, so from governance, you don't decide what needs governance. Governance are rules, like profound language, like profiling people, like so you're setting rules in place, just like Robert had said. If you had a kid, you set rules. You don't just say, listen, you need to go to bed on a school night early. Well, then say, well, it's a weeknight or it's a weekend, I can stay up to 4 in the morning. You go, no. You can't break the rules. You set the rules, so you got to go to bed at a good time. So governance doesn't specifically, it has guide rails and it sets it in. Now, AI security has got a bit more tighter rules because it knows what PCI is, which is payment card information. It goes, you cannot surface credit card information or bank account unless I've told you can surface to the financial team. You cannot surface PII data unless I told you. So there's very specific rules and there's guide rails. We have a huge portfolio that we call accelerators that have them out of the box. But you can say, well, no, I want to add a lot tighter guide rails and a lot tighter policies. And you can do that. We have an SDK that does that. But we don't just go, here you go, here's the SDK, figure it out yourself. We actually have a library of rules that'll help you to stay inside GDPR and inside EUA Act. But you can get even more intensive on what you want to do. It's all inside the solution.
I might add just a comment as well, because I think, Mike, you touched on it earlier, and like it's really valuable of like, think of AI as this like insider threat. So like ask yourself, what happens if this goes wrong? What happens if this was a human that had access to this knowledge and they, for whatever, they were coerced either financially or physically into divulging or doing something? What could happen? And like, this is, I think, maybe a good way to think about, to reframe the problem and to understand, okay, so thus what are the risks if this system that is using AI or the AI has access to this data? What would happen if a human had access to that data and they leaked it? Or, you know, so like think of it, forget about the AI part, just think about it as that insider threat. And that might be a good way to help people to like understand the risk easier, if you take away that technology part and just think about like the risk part of what happens when something goes wrong or could go wrong.
Yep.
Thank you, Robert. So gents, quick fire question to you, just to wrap up. So looking forward 2 or 3 years, right, and the concept of governance and security from an AI perspective, trustworthy AI, what's going to be different? What's going to change? Maybe to Robert, to you first.
Ooh, it is hard to predict the future. You know, I mean, as Mike said, you know, like the adoption curve of AI, there has never been anything like the adoption curve of AI, and the growth rate, while it definitely is, I would say, starting to plateau in terms of, you know, like generational leaps have had, you know, like was it Anthropic or OpenAI that said like they've reached the end of the internet and that there is no more data to eat, you know, and to digest. it's very hard to predict the future, because they are going to continue to iterate and like improve all of the, all of the problems that are identified. How many ores are there in Mississippi or Strawberry? These kind of like classic AI problems. So it's, I would say, very hard to predict what AI governance is going to look like in the future. I do think this like the long tail of AI is going to be the problem. That like an AI never forgets. Mike brought up a very good example of 10 years ago what was normal. Somebody cursing on the phone perhaps is no longer socially acceptable. But the AI doesn't know that. Like it doesn't have that common sense. So I definitely think we're in for a few exciting years, and it is tough to predict what is going to happen. But I will say, not having a governance in place is going to lead to a lot of problems for a lot of companies that are let's say being somewhat blasé or saying, hey, we don't use AI. Like the thing is, every product that they use, will bring AI, even if they say, hey, we've blocked access to ChatGPT. Many companies think, hey, we've solved the problem, that AI poses. That is absolutely not going to survive. It doesn't survive now, let alone in 3 years. So I think preparing for, doing the due diligence in terms of governance and compliance and having a process and like really like eyes open, not trying to like hide away from this problem, but like having a program in place, tackling it as any other information security like initiative that you have, and like having this rigor, I would say, behind it is really important.
Absolutely. And I love that concept. It's just that governance, it's guardrails. What guardrails are you giving your child, your AI, your insider, right? What guardrails are you giving them in terms of what they cannot do? Mike, same question to you. Looking ahead 2 to 3 years. I purposely said not 10 years, right? I'll give you guys the easy
3 years.
3 years. Yeah.
But with technology, we always overestimate in the short term and underestimate in the long term. 3 points I'll leave everybody with. To have a successful AI project, you've got to have trustworthy AI, and therefore you have to build in governance and AI security from the start. Try to build it in after the start. Listen, we've all been there where we try to build IT systems with IT systems since the 1980s. Do not do it. You have to be successful. You have to build it in, guaranteed. Secondly, it is a new threat vector that the cyber aggressors of the planet will abuse as fast as they can figure it out. They will not hang around for us to protect it. They will try to get in and say, I know I can coerce this AI system and I can monetize it, just like, say, the artist or like so on. So the bad guys aren't going to hang around for us to wake up, okay? And then thirdly, from an AI governance and security point of view, you need to embrace it. It's just part and parcel of the world we live in. Period. And therefore, if you're not part of the AI security division in your organization, but you're an active participant in AI, you should be putting your hand up and go, how do I make sure that this thing doesn't get switched off because of the embarrassment of the 4 R's? So those are the 4 Just we're all responsible for security, always have been. Build it in. It should be part of the strategy, not an add-on from the get-go. And the bad guys couldn't care less about our conversations and our should we not. They're gonna move in much faster than us. So we got to move. My final comment always is we got to move fast in the speed of threat. And AI is a brand new threat, and it's gonna move fast.
Thank you, Mike. So, Mike, Robert, listen, thank you both very much. Love the insights today. We've gone from Spider-Man to sandwich machines. We talked about guardrails and governments. We're talking about the importance of both governance and security, and that getting that balance right as you embrace it, rightly so. We've got to all embrace AI, right? It's the way forward. So everyone on the call today, listen, really appreciate you attending and listening to us. If you want to hear more about this, just reach out to us at smarttech247.com, and we'd be delighted to have a chat with you, and we'll wrap our partners, IBM, into the conversation, and we'll take from there. So thank you very much, folks. Appreciate it. And gentlemen, thank you.
Thanks very much.